Happy Canada Day. I'm trying to show the possibilities, just a drop in the infinite ocean of possibilities using Trig with maths. I don't know if I'll ever move past it in this 2001 series. I want to show a way of thinking that probably I came from and it held me back for a long time, and then a way of going deeper that actually allowed you much more possibilities in a very simple way. So we're going to take a look here over at this script, turn it off rotation. We're going to go into just this view. And what we have is two objects, and I'm staying with the trig functions. I'm not doing anything more than putting in sine and cosine currently. But an initial way of thinking, if I go here, is probably to make the mistake of going to the shelf, saying, okay, I understand curves. I'll bring in a ellipse. I'll change its radii from 5 to 2. I'll play with that parametrically, whatever. I'll slide that around until I like something. This is almost as, to me, similar to working in CAD and making decisions. Yeah, points are coming out of it. Focal points are being based within it, which are very good tools for tapping into. The curve is being formed, and then you pipe it. How can you get in there? How can you, well, there's many tools off the shelf that have already been programmed for exploding, breaking it in, dividing, division of curves, all this. If you end up spending time there, you're dependent on that ellipse. Let's take that ellipse and think about it, but let's go somewhere else with it. It's there, but let's generate something that we can maybe have a little more control over. Let's build a set of points, and those points are being generated very similar to how that ellipse is being generated. But I'm able to think about, okay, if I have an x, y, z, if I put z into the same area x and reference that so it never comes off the page and just deals with x and y as an equation, and I'm going to use sine and cosine to do that with amplifications, I actually have some pretty cool control over stretching out those points in each direction to match that other form. But I also have control over the steps to make it kind of chunky monkey, kind of awkward. If I go here and take a look at the object that we've actually made piped, I have a way of, I could do that with divisions, but you can see you can get some really weird geometries that are a little more analog. Put it through a domain and rely on pi to do it. I put it in positive and negative direction, and what I'm able to do with that is take my points and actually have a way of opening and closing it. And rotating it around and choosing how much of this form I actually want to have of that eclipse. You can do the same thing, ellipse, not eclipse. You can do the same thing by all the tools that are up on the shelf, or you can get into the data. And like I said, I'm very much keen to what happens, what are the attributes to those constructed points. Then you do a simple pipe, you throw in a variable pipe, and you can do a little bit of the exact same thing you just did with the graph mapper and a Bezier curve, and have some really cool control over it. And the capping, you can do a bulb, you can do a flat, you can leave it open. I like the bulbous end. So I'm using some tools, but I'm really trying to stay to point and before. And that's what Grasshopper with Wickerson is all about. That's why I'm getting so stuck on the maths. Would you rather have this object, or would you rather have this object? So you decide. And yes, you can gain more control and begin with that as an object. I see that's too often used in its perfection. I would be much more interested in the imperfections associated with this series of points and how I can really mess with them and have some fun with them. That said, you even have the power to go into here and have some very funky things you can do with graph types and playing with multiplications of that, pulling the thickness up at one end, pushing it down at the other, and still having that capped end, pulling in multiple torques and warps. And that's just what you can do. And yes, you can do the same thing, but to start with a perfect ellipse, you're going to have to break it into point counts anyhow and have attributes to those points. I'm not sure who wants to make a necklace that looks like that, but you know, it's sometimes I make a necklace that looks like that. Anyhow, Grasshopper with Wickerson is about putting the analog into the digital, thinking about years of experience of frustration, materials, things that are being defined, and trying to find the methodology in this as the artist, and be honest about it, and show how you're thinking and how you're creating. Anyhow, I should probably put it back into something half decent. a nice smooth little transitional sine curve that's bulbous. I actually like the Bezier curve the best. We'll leave it at that. Get this little necklace thing going. And don't forget, you can still take that curve, go farther in when you have this much control, wrap it through another sine curve and see what we can do. A double Bezier curve is going to elongate it. What if I start putting that tool on it as well? And what if I go so far as to try some other graph types like the sine and playing with that Bezier? So this is giving me a little more funky control as well and being a little smoother. I kind of like it. Let's bring that one up so that's fat. Let's flip it over. It doesn't matter. This is such a way to deal with things visually and intuitively. I think artists, designers, jewelers should all look into this type of stuff. But don't forget the power and the perfection of the maths that underlie everything you do, from your own birth, your growth, and your demise and decay. Thanks for watching.